circle up.
Exactly, yeah. Well, and I think what'll happen is just like the plows will just catch it. And it's inevitable because it's not perfect. I mean, you saw it, right? I mean, it's a quick fix. But it's something. I had to laugh because Josh sent me the article that like made it into like page 2 on the Herald.
It is not the end of the world.
No.
It is not the biggest combo.
No.
But yeah, it was then for folks to know that.
That's great. But yeah, I was laughing really hard. I was like, hey, look at that, we did it.
Oh,
I know we had a about that.
I didn't know either.
April.
Yeah.
I don't even know.
Yeah, so then the
if it's worth. I mean,
I
don't even know if we need to circle up
I
that.
was like, oh, guess I got to head there next.
Jimmy was the one.
Oh, okay.
No, so I was happy to, like, MnDOT provided some.
Well, I was just thinking we have a presentation from Pat,
There.
and then we have kind of a presentation from Bobby, and then it'll just be us, But should I talk to Jenny?
Yeah, see what she wants to do.
Yeah.
Right.
And I went down to Pettigrew and met the legislators.
Yeah.
Big bus pulled up and they all started out. We were going to be working on Friday.
That's amazing.
And
I'm running the enrollment sessions right now.
they had to do it as long as we have some older legislators who
Okay.
move the new ones along the way. Complete project.
Yeah.
And my suggestion is it's the day material.
We'll have that for you.
The scores?
I got the score pretty
Yeah.
much done. I'm still working on the figures.
Sure. Yeah, it's tricky. I put it all into a spreadsheet so that we can go in and like apply percent reductions and do things like that in real
Well, it would be. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that would be.
So,
It seems popular enough. Like, sorry.
No, I know. I just wanted to check in because, traditionally we have a circle, but Pat's comfortable with just kind of giving the presentation and he's probably comfortable as well. And it's just going to be us discussing. If you're okay with that? Or
I'm okay. I just like everybody to be together, but that's, because then they can't, all they're gonna do is stay or you can have to have seat people.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they're coming to discuss right before you
Yeah, I just thought instead of, for what we got going on today, I thought that would be okay. Some people came in, trying it, and I was like, whoa. And then she's like, what am I supposed to? I'm like, well, we'll talk to you. I'll do it if I
Then we have to have microphones.
Yes, yep. We'll take the steel pallets and microphones.
Right.
Gotta get that last minute piece.
Yeah. I kind of forgot about that.
Oh, right. Well, then you do have to leave.
Oh, that's right. It's kind of a little circle. Right. They're square. Yeah. Square.
I realized that in our short class,
Right.
and so,
Okay.
And then when I need to send the glass out,
right. I have to remind myself that too,
Yes. Everybody's out there. Yep.
once I thought I was gonna do it, I was over at the Avenue corner.
Everybody meet you there.
I know, I might do that next year.
That would be funny.
We have, when I sit at the picnic table at the Schroeder Bakery,
Okay.
and I get 3 people there, and I get people to talk to cars, and then in Newton, I sit by the post office, so anyway, I'm doing
It is. It's, and for what it's worth, I'm here. So I went to kind of Untitled Association meeting, not only because I lived there obviously, but they wanted to go on the project. So I got up and talked about it and stuff, and then there were a couple people that had made comments feeling a little left out.
We're not going to circle
I
up.
think it's just because they just
Yeah, for simplicity.
It's like, yeah, I'm like, well, I don't know.
Well, where did you meet?
Oh, it was just somebody's cabin across the lake.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, one of the sleeps, I don't know. Yeah.
There's a lot of those sleeps.
Yeah, it was just somebody's garage, yeah, outside, everybody said, you know,
Okay.
I am blah, 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 so.
I'll move that one.
Somebody's garage, open it up and I'll come and meet you.
There you go, yeah, that would go
See,
far.
that would be included too. It's so hard to make connection with people up there. So, anyway, but next year I might sit in Babylon Corner.
I like it, I'll be there.
I love it. All right.
It's funny.
You have to be creative.
Hey, Bob.
Not as good as you, but hey, we all got.
Oh, come on, we're doing fine.
10, 15.
What's going on?
I just like giving
Top
over
notch.
here and thank everybody and tell you your sentences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good.
Hi, Allison. Hey, Allison, you know, I thought you put those away. No, these are new now. Okay. I just
Glad you're asking me.
Oh, my God.
Normally the trick is knowing where you have to put it.
I'm guessing it's the stick.
I thought so, yeah, but I don't know, Dave.
I don't either.
Like I said, I'm just
Well, I'm
trying
just
to
thinking,
connect the times.
oh, thank you.
Especially with.
I think so.
Oh, it's 9 o'clock on Saturday. I was thinking it was 3 o'clock. Shoot. I just told him, oh, it's in the afternoon. Morning is fine for me. Do you know what time we're meeting on? Connect on Saturday the 30th?
Hi.
We haven't finalized.
Great, how are you? How are we doing?
I just told them.
So yeah,
Not a
just
problem.
so we have.
Well, maybe not, just wait and see.
Pavement analysis.
However we want to do it, we'll make it work.
Can't fit everything all in.
Well, you can't, and there are times I have to make choices. It's today I have a meeting at 1 o'clock at Gunflint Lodge, and, you know, the personnel committee had,
Okay.
I know. So, yeah.
it just, sometimes we have to say, can't do that, not available.
What'd you got?
And sometimes our
My
alternates are not
presence
available.
does not really.
April, I tried it.
Yeah,
Everything.
I
yeah.
tried it. I couldn't get it to work.
Maybe she turned it off.
maybe it's frozen.
Oh, she turned it off.
Oh, see, there's an on-off button.
I thought I tried that. It shows you what I know. I need to get trained on this.
I guess, me too.
We all do.
Thank you, April.
All right. Back in the saddle.
Oh, thank you. Okay. This was last year's.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you and good morning.
Yes,
Thank
I
you and
heard
good
that.
morning.
We
We
talked
did
about you
figure it
the
out.
other night.
Yeah, April did. So you don't even have to move if you don't want to.
Hi, Mike. I will. We'll talk after.
I don't know why I got this wild hair to stay in this formation here, but
Just, you just don't want, you're resistant to change this morning.
I guess.
His window of tolerance is low.
Well, fact.
But it's all right, we'll work with you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Here we are on October 19th, 2021 at 10:39 a.m. For a Committee of the Whole work session. And we won't be taking official action, as this is just a work session, but getting very relevant and important information from our community and discussing that. So We have our agenda here and the minutes from the last work session. And then our first presentation is with Pat Campanaro, who I assume most of the community is pretty familiar with. And, I also want to say that normally our committee of the whole work sessions are kind of a circle over here. And for whatever reason, I requested we just keep it this way. And so disadvantage, the public cannot see Pat. Advantage, they can see all of us easier. And that's as much as I know. But hopefully you can hear us okay, and we can turn mics up if necessary. But thank you for being here, and I'll probably hand it over to you.
Well, I'm really excited to be here, and it's good to see all of you, and I think it's great that they can see you and not me. This is a bad hair day. I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about the Small Business Development Center. That's the Sbdc. Just so you know, Sbdc has been around since about 35 years. The federal government says that small businesses are classified as any business that has 500 or less employees. So every business here in Cook County is a small business, and I'm really happy to be able to work with all of them. My job is really to help businesses succeed, entrepreneurs form new businesses, and almost anything in between, because what I have is not the knowledge myself, but a great network. So I'm going to take you through a quick slide presentation about the Sbdc in hopes that you'll learn something here and then tell other people to get in touch with me, because the big benefit here is that my services are free. It's not that I'm not paid, and I am paid. I'm an independent contractor, and I'm paid by a number of grants through the Northland Foundation. But all of our services are free, and you can't put a value on what we can give small business here in Cook County. So just to get started, the Northland Foundation is our current home. When I started this job about 5 years ago, I was actually working through the University of Minnesota Duluth, but that changed 2 years ago. So Northland is our home, and they're doing a very nice job, and you can see by the dots on the screen that those are all the locations where I have colleagues. So we collaborate together and make sure that we give everyone the best advice we can. These are the people that work with me. Michael Colclough from the Northland Foundation is our executive leader. And I'm just showing you, and I'm not going to show these videos, but you could look at them on your own, 3 different organizations that I've helped over the past year. And I show these with their permission. Everyone I work with is under confidentiality. However, I do ask once in a while, can I tell your story? And they let me, and we put it up on our website. But this is the variety of things I've worked on. Everything from a really big sale like the Gunflint Lodge to this cute little book that went off the ground, and I helped a self-publisher really succeed in selling her book. So that's just a couple of ideas there. If you look at our website, northlandsbdc.com, you'll see a variety of different clients that my organization has worked with and that I've worked with as well. These are the resources that we really pull from to help small businesses in our community, and there's really not a question we can't answer. I tell everyone that. It might take us a while, but we're going to find an answer to your question. In 2020, I spent the majority of my time helping small businesses navigate COVID and all of the opportunities that both the federal government and the state government gave out to help small businesses succeed. That was the thrust of my business, and I was really happy to see what happened up here, because as you all know, we haven't lost anyone. There's a lot of people that are right now not having maybe as much money as they'd want, but we haven't lost anyone. And just in the PPP program, the Paycheck Protection Program, we almost got $12 million of money infused in this county, which was, I thought, really great. And it shows you here, this is all public information from the SBA website, so you know that. It shows you by the zip codes how much money was distributed how. We also had a lot of money given out for the Emergency Disaster Loan Program. Unfortunately, that didn't break down by county, but you'll see how much money Minnesota got.
So with the zip code, is that
businesses that you've assisted, or that's just the total from each zip code?
That's the total from each district. I've assisted a lot of them, but let me tell you how they score, and this is the problem that I have. I cannot take credit for any of the work I do unless the business signs a form and sends it to the SBA. And so once they get their money, they're really not interested in filling out forms. And this is indicative across the territory. We all are complaining about this. I would say about 40% of my businesses actually send the forms back. The other 60 doesn't. When I was brand new at this job, that bothered me. The older I get, the less it bothers me, as long as I'm helping people and I know that. And if I needed to ask, I'm sure they would tell people that.
And so for 55612, that's St. Paul, I believe,
Yeah, and I'm
right?
not sure how that one got in there. I saw that last night, and 613 as well. I have to go back and look at this. I probably did something wrong there.
Oh, well, I just thought, I mean, maybe that's their residency or something, but it's just an incredible amount. I thought maybe it was, I thought it was something different.
I work sometimes out of territory if somebody asks for
Yeah.
me, but not that much.
Yep.
So, but there was a lot of money that went through.
Yeah.
Here's my results year to date. I bill by hours. So this year we're splitting it out between COVID-related requests and just plain old consulting hours. And this is the amount of capital funding that I brought in already this year that people have given me credit for. And I've had new business starts of about 11 that have actually filled out the forms, but I will tell you that number's closer to 12 or maybe 14 right now. So we're really seeing a resurrection of people who are trying to figure out how to work for themselves here in this county, which is pretty exciting. It doesn't help our employment situation much, but it's pretty exciting, you know.
Aside from county government, I think it's the way to go.
Yeah, well, there you go. I also wanted to take these results, and that's why I gave you my 2020 report as well. Because in 2020, the whole amount of capital funding that I brought in was just $3,040,000. So it's ahead of the game year over year. And that's the important thing to me, is that things are really moving here in this county, and people are really looking how to either start their own businesses or grow their businesses and be more successful. So if we just had a few more employees, that numbers would probably be up a little bit more. And that's really the quick and dirty thing here. I just wanted you all to know that lots of resources, lots of help. I meet clients whenever they need to be met. I don't have set business hours and make people come in during the day. Whatever helps them meet with me, I set it up. So I'm just very excited about my job. I love it. There's lots of great feedback in this job. And I have any questions or comments from you guys?
Commissioner Storley.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, Pat, every once in a while we have recommendations for folks you've worked with who want a loan from the county. And through all of your good work and diligence, we pretty much say to Brady, well, you know, if it makes sense, and it makes sense to all of us, why not do this? Do you think there are times, though, that it's a little sketchy, but you still want them to see about getting a loan from the county?
I would say no to that, because the last thing I want is a small business person to see defeat right away. So what we typically do is sit down and work with them to figure out how to fix their financials so that they can come and get a loan that people, just not the county, but a bank can authorize as well. I am a member of the revolving loan fund along with Stacy, and just last month what we've decided to do is have a little subcommittee that meets with these new clients, looks over all of their financials, and either gives them the go-ahead to come to the county for a loan, or this subcommittee is going to work with them to make it easier for them to get the loan, perhaps fix their credit, perhaps pay down some debt, those kinds of things. So we're there to help them. And if somebody insists on coming before the revolving loan fund, of course, we'd let them. But the revolving loan fund does their due diligence. And they've turned loans down. And
Good.
unfortunately, I don't think we get enough loans, applications through the revolving loan fund. So that would be another thing that you guys can actually, not you guys, I got to get rid of the guys thing. You folks can absolutely suggest to people when you hear they're really looking for funds. The county's a great resource, and we've got money. You've got money.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Anything else?
Commissioner Hawkins.
I would just say I really appreciate the work that you do. As a former small business owner, I have worked with Pat. She is very helpful. I know other projects she's been involved in, her advice has been invaluable. And I have a son who is a small business owner in Superior, Wisconsin, and there's issues that I say, oh, if you were only in Cook County, I know who I could get to help you.
And I know who I can get to help him there, so.
Well, that's what I've said. I got to reach out to Pat.
Turn me on.
I really respect the work that you do and appreciate.
Thanks, I really appreciate it. Love my job.
So
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, and I would say the same thing. I am a small business owner, although I haven't used Pat's help on that business, but there are other ventures that I dream about, and Pat's been very helpful in helping direct me and my interests that are wide and diverse, and trying to focus that and taking appropriate steps. So they're still in the hopper, but I really do appreciate your help and our community's work. I know a plethora of peers as well who have used your services and just can't say enough about it, so
Well,
thank
I
you.
appreciate that, and one more thing I'll share, and then I'm done, is that we do have another resource that just came into the county. Tracy Benson has been hired by the Entrepreneur Fund to be a business consultant resource here as well.
Oh,
She
wow.
and I work together, and the cool thing about the Entrepreneur Fund is they actually have money to loan, where the SBDC has no financing.
Mm-hmm.
So I've worked in the past with Steve Serba, and now I'll work with Tracy and Steve Serba. So the resources are multiplying here for small business, and I think that's really exciting as well.
Yeah, I really think our business community can be more resilient with, entrepreneurship and many diverse small businesses. So I just think the more we can do, the better there.
It's so tough to be a small business owner because you have to do everything.
Right.
You know your product, you know your service, but then you have to do human resources, and
Yep.
you have to do payroll, and you
Yep.
have to figure out how to pay your bills. And
Yep.
so I think sometimes just coming into my office and being able to chat
Yep.
is a real resource as well.
One person's strategic planning is not a very thorough process. So
I
yeah.
always say the more brains in the room, the better the
Yeah.
outcome.
Yeah. Well, I also want to point out here your award in 2020 as the state
I
star.
did.
So yeah,
Thank you.
congratulations on that, and that's very exciting and something we can all be very proud of. Thank you for your
It's very
work.
exciting. It was
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Pat, thanks for your presentation and your work in the community. It really means a lot. I just wanted to ask, when you're dealing with new business owners who are coming from outside of Cook County, do they frequently cite broadband as a factor that attracts them to this area?
Absolutely. That
Yeah.
has been a very strategic resource that we're able to provide, and people are very excited about that. I mean, even if you're a retail business, to be able to have a broadband link to take payments and do the work on, and sell things online, it's been a real boon, and there are a lot of people that I've talked to, probably in the last 60 days, who are really thinking about coming up here and trying to find a spot to do their remote work. So it's a big deal.
Yeah, great.
And I have another, that spurred a question. Just, have you had an opportunity to work in the school at all, or are there programs for kind of our high schoolers to get more kind of business savvy or development education, or is that kind of outside of the SBDC's role? Or?
Not outside, because the Minneapolis Federal Bank System has a really cool smart money package that they would deliver to me that I could deliver to the school. And I've also worked with the Junior Achievement Program in their spots. So I don't get paid for that kind of stuff, but that's something I do because it makes a big difference. And I'm anxious with Tracy to begin talking to the school again about doing some of those kinds of programs now that COVID has kind of settled down and they're back in school. But we want to do that, because that's where it starts.
Yes.
I'd like to start working with some of those seniors or juniors who really want to be entrepreneurs.
Yes. Yeah.
And just start mentoring them as they go through the process. I mean, my big thing is start small and grow in steps.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, I'd love to work in the school.
Oh, excellent.
And Megan and I have had a couple of just brief conversations, and I've pitched it there as well.
It's very exciting. Great. Any other questions or comments? Or?
Hey, oh, yes.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, okay, so we know broadband really has helped small businesses. Are there any other real challenges that you see, like across the board, that maybe are on the horizon that we should be aware of what needs to be addressed to develop more small businesses in Cook
I'm
County?
consistently trying to figure out how to future-proof the second economy up here, and I don't have that answer, because I'd say the same thing everybody is telling you. We don't have enough people for the employee situation that we have here, so we have to figure out how to do business differently so that employees are not the backbone. We're certainly all going to need them, but how else can we manipulate our businesses so they're not so employee intensive? And then, of course, I'm really looking forward to the HRA. I think once we get the HRA and EDA working together, and we start thinking about the trifecta, employees, housing, and how what the business community needs, that's going to help with that. But I've researched across the country, thinking there might be a hidden, wonderful idea out there, and I haven't found it yet. Everybody's in the same boat. I'm not hearing anything differently. And I thought I would find somebody who had cracked that nut. But no, but I think we're making progress. And I think with the HRA coming on board, it's going to lend a new voice to the conversation, and that's going to help. And new money, probably. So, no.
All right, thank you.
However, if I did know that, I'd keep it a secret and sell it.
That's the business side of you.
Not put it out.
Commissioner Sterling, you have a question or comment?
How can people contact you?
Oh, yes, it's my, I'm certainly working down at the EDA office with Beth Jost right now, but it's my pcampanaro@gmail.com is the best way, which is email. But I am on the Prosperity North website. They can look there and find a page on the Sbdc, and all the information is there as well.
Okay.
But I'm around. Just tell people, they'll find me.
Yep. And that's the log building, right?
Yep.
On the corner. Yep.
The log building, yes.
Yep.
I'm in the old DMV site
Yep.
now.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Pat.
Hey,
Boy,
so good to
just
see you
great
guys.
work.
Thanks for this opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.
All right, that was presentation 2A, and now we have presentation 2B with engineer Robbie Haas. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, everybody. This will go pretty quick, I think. So a quick background is we had requested kind of some funding a while ago, I don't know if you remember this, to perform pavement analysis of all the CSAH routes in the county. You guys graciously believed me that this was a good thing to do, which I appreciated. So now
Stacy questioned it.
It's
an informational meeting. People should know.
So we were able to do, we split it up over 2 seasons. We want to do half of it at a time. The Gunflint is half of our paved routes, so they finished doing the Gunflint this past season. And what this shows is kind of what we were thinking internally, that our roads are in a little bit better shape than we thought, which is great. So I'll just kind of cruise through this quick. What they did is kind of a van with a bunch of equipment on it that drives around. I don't know if anyone saw it, probably. Sorry if it was really scary looking. But so it's an analysis that includes ground penetrating radar tests, pavement coring and hand auger borings, and then a falling weight deflectometer test. So it's a big thing that just hits the ground every so often to determine the road strength. So we did 56 miles of the Gunflint. Figure 1 on here kind of shows you just starting at Trunk Highway 61 and working your way up, in a few different segments on there. So the first figure kind of goes over, what the ground penetrating radar showed us. and it kind of gives us an average bituminous thickness and an average base layer thickness. And so, and it's kind of what you would think. Bituminous gets a little thinner the further we get up the trail, probably just because of less work occurring over the years. The base layer thickness, you know, maybe kind of thins out, not a ton, but it looks good the whole way, which is great. You know, you can see that through all the segments, northbound and southbound too, which is nice. So that's what they get from the radar. When you get to the hand borings, what that does is it kind of lets you confirm what the radar shows. The radar will show you layers, but not what the layers are. So then they go in with the coring, and they take all these samples, and then that actually shows you what's in there. And so then you can see from that in the next figure, oh, sorry, probably going too fast, that, you know, that average thickness is decreasing as we go up, just like the radar was showing, and then the base in some cases is a little bit better than what the radar was showing. Also good. What this eventually leads us to, though, is the last figure, is the most important part, the spring load axle or spring load restrictions. Anybody that drives a truck that hauls things is very, very familiar with this. Historically, the Gunflint has been restricted from, it tapered, so it was 10 tons, I think from 61 up to headstrums, and then it would taper down to 5 tons towards the end. So it would go 10, 9, 7, 5, whatever. What this is showing us, though, is even in the springtime, it's just 10, period. Good. Which is huge.
Yeah.
This is not just loggers, this is people that want building materials, appliances, that kind of stuff. You know, the trucks can actually go down the Gunflint now. You might have to meet them on the Gunflint. I wouldn't go on our road. No, I'm just kidding. But at least you can get down to the trail and stuff.
Yep.
But no, I mean, this was the whole purpose of doing this, was to say, look, we have good base material, we have good bituminous. As what I can gather, we don't, you know, major reconstruction doesn't need to occur. So that $1 million a mile thing that gets thrown out a lot, you know, I don't think we're kind of looking at that anymore. I think we're looking at more, you know, either reclamations or mill and overlays, depending. Which is, I mean, it's still expensive, but it ain't $1 million a mile.
That's right.
So,
That's huge.
yeah, so this was like really cool to see. I got really excited when I saw this. Trying to think if there's anything else. Yeah, Brown's done with that part. They'll finish it up next year. Everything's already, we're already said, here's your money, we're done. They just need to do it. So we paid them half, and we'll pay them the other half next year. That's all I got for now. Do you guys have any questions? Yeah.
Commissioner Salsa.
So basically, our first year was good results. We like to see that. We'll have to wait and see next year. But this alone, this is, you know, this is a good investment to know where we're at right now with this, and we'll see what next year brings for the other roads.
Absolutely, yeah. It, you know, it showed us, at least on the Gunflint, we didn't hit any birch logs, which was great. That's what I was worried about. But no, it's amazing that, you know, the whole thing can just be considered a 10-ton route all year, no matter what. I think that'll be, I think everybody that will eventually hear this that hauls things is going to be very happy.
Yeah. Spread it far and wide there. That's worth tooting, I think.
Yeah, so this turned out so good, so next year it'll probably be the opposite, but I don't know. Pessimism.
Positive thinking.
Positive thinking, that's right. It'll be great.
Yeah, do you have, I mean, you said this is internally kind of what you were thinking, right? Is there?
Well, and I say internally because we couldn't find, you know, when I looked historically back at what we had been restricting roads to, that was something, you know, that I'll admit I was new coming in at and not fully understanding. And so I was like, well, what have we done in the past? And it just seemed a little suspicious that nothing had changed over the past 10 or 15 years. And I'm like, that seems odd. That nothing, you know, unless there was major reconstruction done somewhere in the county, you could see a change. But as far as the Gunflint was concerned, I didn't really see any, and it just seemed bizarre. And so that's where I thought, and then obviously hearing about, you know, how things used to be constructed, not being able to find why they were constructed that way, this kind of answers my questions and will help us go forward then as far as what to do in the future, and just knowing Gunflint's pretty good. Like, kind of nice.
And so, now that we have this data,
Uh-huh.
and as you say, things change over time, when might we have to do this again? Ever?
Well, I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay.
And I say that semi-confident, only because, like, if a road washes out, if we start getting major events, you know, then that might bring that up again. But I think as long as we can, you know, as we do projects and keep track of that information, that kind of eliminates this part of it.
Yep. Yeah, great. Yeah, great. Yep.
So, yeah.
Well, thank you for the good news. We don't always get a lot of good news,
No.
so, woo.
Especially on roads.
Especially
Yeah.
on roads, that's right. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Looks like not.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And that brings us to item 3, Administrator, and James is on the horn here.
Welcome to the Infinite Conferencing System. Visit us on the web at infiniteconferencing.com.
Give me just a moment.
Please enter your
Mr. Chairman.
conference entry code followed by the pound sign.
Possibilities are infinite.
Ooh, I did have another question for Pat,
After the
though.
tone, please state
I was just
your
curious
name.
where the closest
James Yorkie?
non-small business was.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was thinking Two
Hello?
Harbors?
Hello, Tessa?
Maybe.
Can you hear me?
Hi.
Hey
Yes, I
there.
can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hang on just a moment. We're going to get started on this item in just a second, okay?
Perfect.
All right. All right, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, good morning. I'm pleased to say that we have with us this morning Tessa Melvin, who's with David Drown Associates. DDA, as you know, conducted the search for Cook County for my position a year ago. And they also work with local governments across the state of Minnesota on a variety of projects, one of which is classification and compensation studies. And the last class and comp study that we did was about 5 years ago, and it's recommended that we do one every 5 years to understand kind of how we stack up to our fellow county governments and make sure that our compensation is in line with the market. And so this morning, I'm going to have Dr. Tessa Melvin present their proposal, and I'm going to pull it up on the computer. So Tessa, if you'll give me just about 30 seconds, we'll get it started, and then you can go.
Perfect.
I don't know if you noticed in the Cook County paper last week, I got a call from writer Rob Perez, and he wanted to know about the biggest pothole in Minnesota,
Yeah, I saw that.
or Cook County. No, Rob, it's not the biggest one, but at least we worked, you know. I just thought it was so funny. He was looking for some kind of story,
Catchy,
you know?
yeah. Sensational.
All right.
Yep.
Okay, Tessa, we're ready for you.
Perfect. All right. I'm just going to kind of talk through my slides, James, so then you can kind of show them where we're at. And then please ask any questions as I go along. I just want to give a little background on us and then what we propose and what that actually means. So again, ask questions as we go. The second slide says David Drown Associates. Basically, we've been around for 20 years. David started the company. He was a former civil engineer by trade. And he kind of created on the finance side to do bond sales, economic development, and then about 6 years ago, our clients came to us and said, hey, we really need help in human resources. So we started doing executive recruitment, organizational studies, and then classification and compensation. We have worked with over 450 government clients, mostly all in Minnesota. That's where we are worked. And I would say from a background piece, I think we're different than most consultants because we've all worked in the public sector. and most of us all have been county or city administrators, which I think makes a big difference because we understand local government, and we really do try to give solutions that fit you, not just a cookie cutter. So on slide 3, that's me. I lead this practice area and have 15 years of city and county government experience. Former city administrator for the city of Maple Plain. I worked in the city of Shoreview, and I also worked at Dakota County, and I have a doctorate in public administration. And then slide 4, Mark Goldberg, my colleague, was going to be on the call, but he got pulled away. He has 25 years of compensation and classification experience, former compensation manager, and he has 10 years of public sector experience. And other people on our team are Gary Wires, former county administrator, Kelly Jones, these are data analysis, Roxanne Chmielewski, former HR director, Melanie Alt, former HR director, and then David, the president. Like I said prior on slide 7, sorry, I forget that I'm talking and not there personally.
All good.
Basically, I just kind of, what sets us apart from our competition, I'm not saying this as a sales, I'm just really being truthful. The past practitioners helped a lot. We understand local government. We customize our results, so whatever we do for you isn't going to be exactly what we do for another county, and that's intentional because you're different, you have different service levels, you have different financial responsibilities, so we want to make sure that we meet that. And then the last piece is service. So as you're going to see through this, we kind of break it up by what you need to maybe what that ongoing maintenance looks like, and we created an ongoing maintenance service model like you guys would do for your county roads with your pavement improvement. You do minor improvements every year to maintain the road and not have to do a total reconstruct. It's the same with your employees. They're your biggest part of your budget. They're your biggest asset to the county. And we want to make sure we do things on an ongoing basis to minimize wage gap differences and then making sure we're adjusting as we go along. So on slide 7, it says, again, what sets us apart from our competition, that implementation. I can tell you right now, I was in a board meeting for 2 hours this morning. We gave a implementation model with a cost model in June, and we've been working with the labor attorney since then and the board to make something that will pass union negotiations and meet the board's goals. Most consultants, when they do a study or work, they kind of say, here's where it is, good luck. We really work with your labor attorney, or if you do it in-house, to make sure we don't undo your strategy, but also make sure it fits the board's philosophy. And then the communication, that's the big piece of it, working with the project team, the county board, department heads, employees, labor attorney, and union. So slide 9, the first one is
Oh, I'm sorry. I have a backup question, if I may. On the
Sure.
yeah, just
Yep.
just work with client through negotiations. How does that work?
Well, negotiations are never easy, but like, for example, in the county that I'm working on, we just did a market analysis and we came back and we said, you are currently at this % of market. If we adjusted it, it would cost you this. They came back and said, we don't want to be market average, we want to be above market. So we came back and we did another cost implementation, and now we're working with the labor attorney to do what we hope to present to the union. And so it's a budget cost. So it literally has every employee by department, by union, the cost of moving to the new system.
Okay.
And so that entails working with the labor attorney, and I can say most consultants do not do that. They'll just do a study or a market analysis and say, here's where you should be, here's the cost, and then good luck, and then leave. We've never had a study that we haven't implemented, and that's because we'll work through it with you to whatever that looks like. It might be a 1-year implementation, a 2-year implementation, but we will work with you to get results and to get you something you're satisfied with.
Great, thank you.
So the market analysis basically says we would determine your benchmark, so either based on what you guys currently have. So one thing I always say is, do you have anywhere in your union contracts where you have a list of benchmarks? If so, we would use those. Otherwise, we would come back and say, here's based on your tax capacity, your county government aid, your services, your population, geographically where you're located, here's who we would recommend. We always make sure this group is approved by the board, and usually we ask that we work with department heads to make sure they are happy with this group, because this really determines kind of to set the tone for transparency. Once we had that approved benchmarks, we would collect data, and basically, like I said, we would say, here's where you are in relationship to the market. So then at that point, it would tell you, of your jobs, these jobs are under market. We say anything within 95% is competitive. Anything that falls under 90% would raise a red flag, and I would say, okay, based on that, is it a job that was mismatched to the market? Is it poorly evaluated, meaning it's been updated, but its evaluation hasn't checked? Or maybe it's just a pay grid where that one grade maybe is really low in comparison to the market.
Where does property values or housing costs factor into this?
Sure. Yep, we can include those too. So if like every county is different, and so if you have specific criteria that you'd like us to look at, we will do so. So you're right, housing is definitely, could be like median housing values. We've had some say tax rate, tax levy, or some cities we'll even look at like fiscal disparities. So we want to make sure that benchmark meets who you think you are. And I always say it's kind of who you look like on paper, so that population, geographic location, those are usually a good tendency, but sometimes it's who you act like. So they might not be counties that surround you, but because of your service level or your unique situation of where you're located, or the size or something like that, you might be representative of another county. So we can include those criteria.
Even, grocery costs, that sort of thing?
I think you're just trying to broadly say, do you consider cost of living?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Is that a factor you can incorporate, cost of living?
Yeah, we'll look at the cost of living. So that's actually a really good question. So most counties, I'm just going to be honest, they confuse the cost of living with a market adjustment. So most counties will say, we're just going to ask our counterparts what adjustment they're giving and how they're adjusting their pay grid. So it's 2% or 3%.
Yeah.
Cost of living is the actual term. And if you were actually doing it, you would look at either the Department of Labor. Some people will use Social Security cost of living. Some people use index like Kiplinger or whatever. But most of the majority just do an actual market adjustment. But we could look at that information as well of how you've done it in the past and how you want to move forward.
Great. Really, really happy to hear about that. Thank you.
And that's a great question because those two terms get interchanged and they shouldn't because they don't mean the same thing.
Exactly.
So that's a great
Yeah.
question.
Yes. Yep. I appreciate that support.
Yeah. So on slide 10 is evaluating jobs. So we know that you guys are currently, I believe it's the Keystone-Hayes system. Is that correct, James?
That is correct.
Okay, so that's the system you're currently using. So one of the options would be if you wanted to move away from that system, we have a system we use we call JET, and that basically looks at job descriptions a little bit different. So the Hayes system was designed to look at jobs based on their education experience, similar to JET. It looks at their problem solving and accountability. Where JET looks at the job description, it looks at education, experience needed, certificates needed for the job, then it looks at decision making, that it has not only on its job, but the entire organization. So we look at your budget, how many people are in the department, problem solving. We look at communication or relationships. So who are you communicating and what are you communicating to them? We look at working conditions to include hazards and stuff like that. Mental effort. So mental health has been a big issue now. So we're looking at that as stress, who you're dealing with, and then physical effort. And then last of all, working conditions if you're inside or outside. So this option would say, you know what? We don't think our pay is wrong, but maybe our jobs aren't looked at in a fair and equitable way. So this would be moving all your jobs to a new system. So basically the reason you would do this is your classification system looks at job descriptions, and they all are intended to work the same way and give you what Pay Equity would call is a comp worth, to tell you what your job is worth to the organization. Each system is designed a little bit different, and like the HAY system and like DBM, they were really created for the private sector and they've been adjusted to the public sector. Ours, JET, was created just for the public sector. But we have no preference. If you want to keep your system, we can, and we can evaluate jobs that stand out or look at all of them. And this works, when we do this, we look at your job description. So we would work with employees and supervisors. Usually they fill out kind of a survey that helps us understand their job. We move them to evaluation, and then we have a classification appeal process to say, okay, here's where we graded you. Is there anything missing in your job description or would warrant another review?
This
And
is,
then,
yeah, this is very interesting.
go ahead.
Yeah, it's just very interesting hearing about the different systems, and most of us weren't sitting in these seats during the implementation of that, and so we're all not that familiar with how that process went. But it sounded like a very difficult process, and the feedback I get from employees by and large is gratitude that there's a system in place, but maybe hoping for more transparency and more input potential and feedback potential. And
Sure.
so, you know, as commissioners, I think it's safe to say that we really want to be consistent. We really want to be fair, and we really want to be transparent. And so I appreciate that the JET system was developed specifically for the public sector, and I'm really curious about more of that. But I mean, just to be clear, the process would be pretty transparent for both the public and employees then?
Yep, and I can go through what that would look like too, because it kind of leads into the ongoing maintenance. So
Okay.
give me
Yep.
5 more minutes, and if I don't answer, ask it again.
Yep, you betcha. Thank you.
Perfect. Then on slide 11 is market analysis and pay grade. So that's that first one where we do the market analysis. So then we say Cook County is at, let's say, 85% of market minimum and 85% of market maximum. If we want to get to 100% of market or market average, we would adjust your pay grid. Here's what it would look like. That would be 17,000, and then 12 is we're going to do that, but we're going to do a budget implementation. So we're going to take your whole roster, we're going to put people in and tell you the cost per employee, per department, and if there's any union. The reason that slides 9, 11, and 12 look so different, look very similar but are different costs, is most consultants won't break it out. I always want to say, if you just want us to do a objective market analysis and we can tell you where you are in relation to the market and you can internally do whatever, save you money. If you want us to calibrate or restructure your current pay grid, that would be that calibration. And the last one is if you want us to do an objective market analysis, recalibrate, and then do a budget implementation and work with your union negotiations if you're currently in union. Those would be kind of those 3 levels. And you can see the big part of the difference when we start working is we ask the board and the project team, where do you want to be in relationship to the market? And then we start calibrating based on that. We don't just assume you want to be average or at the median or midpoint or something like that. We want to work with you to create what works for you in Cook County. And then the last one option is an ongoing maintenance. So what this says is for the next 3 years, you would pay $10,500 annually. But what that would entail is we would review all your job descriptions. So we would work with employees and supervisors similar to the evaluation job that we talked about on slide 10. And we would rewrite job descriptions, reclassify them either in your current system or new system. We would look at benefits. We would do a market analysis every year to let you know if any jobs are starting to fall behind the market. We would update your salary plan based on your COLA or market, however the board decides to do that. We would maintain and complete your pay equity report, and we would do your payroll implementation for next year, 5-year budget, however you guys forecast. But the nice thing with an ongoing maintenance, I say that it is like a pavement improvement project. We're looking at the market every year. We're making minor adjustments every year so you don't have a huge wage gap. You never have to do a large study like the one you just did, and it is transparent because we're asking employees every 3 years, has their job changed? If so, what's changed? We're looking at the market, and we're making those adjustments and communicating it back to the board and employees every year. So I just gave you guys a lot, and I don't try to confuse you by giving you multiple options, but I never want you to pay for something you don't need.
Thank you. Yeah. I bet you there's questions. Who would like to start?
I guess one thing before we get into questions, one thing I wanted to share is that before her departure, Pamela Dixon, our most recent HR director, began the process of updating all of our job descriptions and got about halfway through it before she had to leave. And so we've got that work, and my question was, and Pamela has offered to work with us on a contract basis to finish updating those job descriptions. So that's one possibility. And I think there'd be value in doing that simply because there would be consistency across all those job descriptions, having them done by one person. But once that work is done, then that's it. And there isn't really, we would need to, at some point, re-update those in 3 years or what have you. And so, I just wanted you to be aware that that is an option here. And that's why I asked Tessa to break out the costs, because initially it did include an update of all job descriptions. And I wanted to understand what the cost difference would be if we had Pamela update the remaining job descriptions versus having DDA just do all of them. So,
Yeah, I had that question, just how that could work. Okay, thank you. Any questions from commissioners? Commissioner Hawkins, I see you moving.
Of course, yeah. So the job descriptions, I am still wondering, Keystone versus Jet job descriptions. I know there was a lot of angst over the Keystone. And I guess I'm out of the loop now, so I don't know if we've kind of solved those issues. I'm guessing not.
your guess would be correct.
And
Yeah.
I'm thinking, my initial thing is, that was not a good system. And that maybe, I don't know what JET does or how it would be different, and I'm wondering, do they evaluate saying, ooh, these don't, how do you determine a good job description?
So I would look back on my past experience in Johnson County, Kansas, where we had a system that was based on the Hay system. And my experience was it worked fairly well. There's always angst when you're talking about reevaluating jobs and reclassifying them because, people get bumped up, people get bumped down. And when people get bumped down, there's a lot of upset about that. So that's, whether we stick with Keystone or migrate to Jet, I think you're going to have some of those same issues. And I can't, obviously not having used the Jet system before, I can't say with confidence that we wouldn't have the same kinds of concerns come up with staff. But any system is going to have its pros and cons. So.
And maybe to your question, it might be really helpful, Tessa, if we could have a tangible example of the Hayes system versus the Jet system. Is that possible? Not now necessarily, but sometime soon. Yeah.
I think. Yeah. So one thing I just want to make sure is perfect because I was just looking back on the evaluate jobs. We wouldn't rewrite them, but we would go and move them from your old system to your new. Because I think at once I got that confused. I put rewrite, but we would look at them.
Yep.
To your question and to what James said, I agree. We have about 41 clients, and I think I'm trained in 8 different systems. All the systems are created to get you to a similar place, but what I think the real question is one, and I don't mean, my example may not be the best, but I think it makes sense. If you have an issue with transparency, people don't like the Hayes system, there's just a lot of angst, bad taste in their mouth, the implementation didn't go well, I would say rip off the whole Band-Aid, move to a new system. If it went okay and people maybe have some angst but not a lot, I would say take the Band-Aid back, let's put Neosporin on the wound and let it heal. We can fix transparency in any system. We can look at any jobs that are falling outside of the market. Was it in this evaluated position? Does it not match the market? Did something change? We can fix those. It's really a question of your culture and what will employees buy into and what do you think you need. Do you need a whole new system to get a fresh slate and to move forward, or can you continue in the system? The other question would be, if you do ongoing maintenance, then I would say move to your desired system. It'll just be that it'll take us a little longer to get there because we do smaller increments. If you're just looking to see where you are in relation to the market, then it doesn't matter what system it is, you're still going to have some outliers and you might need to fix those. But if you truly do not like the Hayes system, or it just didn't go well and some jobs are mismatched and you want to change all of it, that's when I would change all of it. But I would say don't fix what's not broke, but you guys really are the expert of what's broke.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd have to hear what the issues were to be able to measure whether it's to the extent, as she's saying, that we would need to shift or consider a different one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've gone through these evaluations many times, and I've never gone through one that some people weren't ecstatic and some people were, we'll say, extremely disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
So it is one of those you have to find where you're at and what's driving those issues, because some of the issues may in fact just be inherent to the fact that you're doing a review.
So, and I would ask Commissioner Hawkins, since you're in a unique position here because you were a staff member for 3 years before being elected, and so you have a unique perspective on this question. So I would ask you, what is your perception? Do you feel like the issues that we have with our current system are kind of sporadic or kind of circumstantial versus systemic?
Yeah, I was thinking about that this morning again. I know that when the job descriptions were reviewed, there could be some frustration across other departments saying, well, that department, I do the exact same thing. And it was brought up a few times that you just need to know the jargon to get your job description changed. And so you'd read a job description and, oh, well, I do the same thing. I just didn't write it down that way. So that's what concerns me. I'm hoping with that when we got Pamela here and we were going through that, some of that went away.
Yeah.
I don't know, because like I said, I'm not in the day-to-day of it anymore. I don't follow exactly what the Personnel Committee is discussing, so. I'm just I just know there were issues, and I don't know if there are today.
Yeah.
And you have to remember, that was the first system we had.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, as in any system, you're going to have, like you say, ups and downs. And if you can say maybe the JET system is going to reveal something different, that would be fine too. I think we need to understand the fairness, all of that needs to be reviewed, as we said, and this is the time to do it.
Correct.
And, the question about do we have a systemic problem and do we need to tear off the Band-Aid versus putting on some Neosporin, which I like that analogy a lot. My feeling is, and again, I'm fairly new to the organization, and I know what I've heard from staff. My feeling is that these problems with it are not systemic. They're more related to specific positions. And if that's the case, then maybe put the Neosporin on and not do a wholesale revision of job descriptions makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's what I heard as well,
Yeah.
was that some people felt like if they had been trained a little better on, what's valued and this type of thing, and they could have described and made their position fit there, well then, again, that's an adjustment. That's not a start over, that's just, and as you go forward with a system, that's inherent in the education as you move forward. Not just for the employees, but for the managers and everyone else. The managers couldn't help them in that situation because they were learning at the same time. Not trying to be unfair or anything else, just trying to, adapt to this new process. So, yeah, I'd be hesitant to make a significant shift, because then, in fact, you're putting the managers and the employees back into exactly the same condition that caused the problem in the first place.
Yeah, I don't want to rush into, let's redo the whole thing.
No, but it's good to hear it.
But we need to be aware that.
Yeah.
And I don't know, so that I appreciate your perspective that we can use antiseptic and.
That's my
I hope-
perception of it too,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I really would like to involve the Personnel Committee in this discussion.
Oh, sure.
Absolutely.
Sure,
And
absolutely.
try to really dig in a little bit more. I think the biggest systemic problem was the transparency aspect of it, and just, misunderstandings, and frankly, just probably not enough staffing, addressing it specifically. It was our county administrator who was the HR director at the same time, and there was just, I think, too much on the plate there, but,
And that's a
Yeah.
question of culture, right? I mean,
It is.
And my view is we need to be transparent, and we need to always be striving for equity, right? And to the extent that we have a system in place where there are inequities, I absolutely want to address those. I think we owe it to our staff who work really hard for the residents of this
That's
county
the whole reason you do these.
to strive for that.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Please.
I do think I look at that piece of it as James will help in discussions or whatever, but really, as far as the system, you'll have to evaluate with your department heads and your managers and things, what are the plus and minuses to shifting from where you're at to something different, or do we really focus on what we learned and continue to evolve and grow with the system that we have to see if that's truly going to make it work for us. For our use, I'm actually more focused on, as we do this, what are our comparables? What are we being compared against? Because that makes all the difference in the world as far as the legitimacy of what those pay structures and levels are. Some of them are inherent in you know, in the world. This is basically, you know, in our part of the world, this is what they pay and this type of thing. But I think in the public sector, very important to be able to know your benchmarks and understand those and why those were chosen, I think is utmost to ensuring that the equity is there to the employees.
I've heard that as well in the last year's negotiations. That was.
Yeah, you don't want to shoot it, you know, comparing yourself against somebody that you're really not. And you certainly don't want to be compared against folks that are known for paying people less. You really want to make sure that you find that right spot, and that's not easy to do, and that's generally why you hire an outside firm to be objective in making that call.
Tessa, could you also talk, well, I have two different things written down here. One is our recently departed from the organization, HR director, was talking about kind of more creative tactics in the current job market challenges, and how actually education is a factor that is moving down in priorities. Is that something you're seeing, or is that something we should try to incorporate into a system, or what's your perspective there?
So I want to make sure I understand the question. Is like an education background as important as it once was? Is that what you're
saying? It seems like there is less and less of an emphasis on it, and it also comes from kind of an equity perspective too, about individuals' backgrounds and opportunities. But kind of where she was going with that is that maybe we should. She wasn't straight up saying it, but she was asking, maybe we shouldn't be putting so much emphasis on education.
Yeah, I think it definitely depends on the job. Like some jobs require, if you have a county engineer, they have to be a licensed engineer.
Right.
County attorney has to have a law degree. So some things you can't change. I do support, though, always putting in the job description, like if you have an associate's degree, 4 years of experience, but I like and or equal combination, because that allows you to substitute education for experience and vice versa.
Yeah.
You're able to steal someone that has 10 years of actual experience, even though they don't have the degree.
Right.
They're actually doing it.
Right.
So I think that definitely helps. And I think that counties in particular are having to be more creative on how they are hiring. Like sometimes county administrators were former county engineers or human service directors, because they might not have all of the experience, but they have a big part of it. So I think being creative and innovative is definitely helping in the marketplace when you're recruiting. And some positions are just really hard to fill right now.
Just some?
Things that are going on in the world. What's that?
Just some? That was a joke.
All of them.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it. And then part of what I heard prior, and just my 10,000-foot look, is it sounds like you have two issues going on. One, people just didn't feel that the process was transparent. So it's not a blame of the A system or a JET system. It's just that the process maybe wasn't as transparent as it could have been. Mm-hmm. And because of that, there's angst. Secondly, are we using the right benchmark, and who are we comparing to? In hearing that discussion, I don't think you need to move from the hay to another system. I would say your best option would be to do the ongoing maintenance, because that allows you to, A, look at that market, decide who that is. And I think that would include using your department heads and or union representative, if that be your case. Some organizations do that, it buys that full transparency. Secondly, with the ongoing maintenance, it would allow Pamela to continue those job description reviews if you want, or we could, it doesn't matter. But I think part of that transparency is letting employees review their job, and I think a big part of what a lot of consultants don't do is follow up. So if I was in the last study and I didn't agree with my job, there probably wasn't a follow up that says why. And I think that's a big part of that classification appeal process, to say, okay, you said that I'm a grade 10, but I think I do equal work of my neighbor who's a grade 11. I want to be an 11. Couple of things there is follow up is, are your jobs equal? Yes or no. B, work level, and positions are by positions, not people. That's how we pay. You can't argue pay, but you can say my job description is equal. We have same problem solving, decision making, those types of things. But I think that follow through is important for employees. Now, with that said, you are still not going to get 100% happy employees, because everyone feels that they're important, they do more, and they're special. And I'm not arguing that, but
And they work really
tries
hard.
to be equitable, so it won't address all of that, but I think it will address some that at least we can agree to disagree, and here's why you are at this grade.
Yeah. I also,
But you could do that also by just doing a market, because it will tell you, I can guarantee the data will tell you what jobs are under-evaluated, or maybe not where they should be. Then the question will be, why is this such an outlier? Is it the job description? Is it the service level? Did the evaluation system not do what it was intended to do? So either way, you can build that transparency, and you'll find out ones that are, and we can go in and reevaluate those particular ones, if you just do a market analysis. So I don't think you need to tear off the Band-Aid. I think you can use Neosporin in different ways of fixing it. But I think the communication piece will be huge in whatever you do, to say, hey, the county board values its employees. This is what we're going to do. This is what it will look like. Here's how it impacts employees, and kind of keep them up to date on what's going on.
yeah, and I'm getting the impression that we're all on a similar page as far as that is concerned. But again, I would very much like to have further discussions with the personnel committee and
Sure.
talk through that a little bit more. But I had another kind of question, or hope you could go in a little more detail, just about the market adjustment versus the COLA adjustment, and what you observe there, and what should be expected, and that sort of thing. And I'm coming from this from just a 1-year experience in negotiations, really trying to lean on the regional CPI from the Bureau of Labor and Management, and then and tying that to a COLA, and then just having really what's the word? I guess just scattered conversations in negotiations about the appropriateness of that or not, and just had a really hard time with it.
Yeah, so the way most entities, cities and counties work is they have a pay grid, like you have, I'm sure, and if they look around and they average a 2.5% increase from their surrounding communities, they'll adjust the whole pay grid by 2.5%, and they call it a market adjustment. Some will call it a COLA. It's truly a market. You're really adjusting your whole pay grid based on what other people are doing. It's a market adjustment. Textbook would say that is not the way to do it because 2% is a lot different for someone making $10 an hour than someone making $40 an hour. So should it be equitable percent? You know, like actual money? That's the question. Most adjust that whole grid the same way, so that's how the public sector does it. Some clients do like the CPI, and they'll go by that either monthly or average it out by year, and they'll say, like I have one client who's doing a 1.5% increase based on their CPI projection. That's great information, and that's truly what the cost of living is. Unfortunately, what it does is if everyone in their region is doing a 3% and they're only doing a 1.5, they're now 1.5% behind the market. So that's the caution there, but sometimes it'll benefit. Like I have another entity, and I forget the organization they use, but this year they're projecting a 5.5% increase based on their, it's not CPI, it's a different one they use. So that means they're going to be above market. I think that you can still do that. You just need to caution and watch how the market's moving because you still don't want to fall behind significantly based on what you're doing. I think the end is you're trying to be equitable, you're trying to be reasonable to your taxpayers, fair to employees. So I think setting that up is a wise choice, deciding here's what we're going to do, but then you still need to do that market to make sure you're not falling behind. So if you decide CPI is going to be our adjustment and we find out in 5 years we're starting to get behind, then we need to do a market adjustment. And what would that look like to the grid? Sorry, that was a long.
That was great. No, that was great. And you had mentioned that doing that straight percentage is maybe not the way to go because the higher end, it's a little skewed. What other options would there be? Some kind of formula where it's...
Yeah, so I have one, and like I said, this is not the norm. I have one of my clients, they literally do everyone, like if they figure out the percent and they average it out, so everyone would get a 75-cent increase or whatever that increase would be. So they have a formula that they do it on their pay grade. So if the market adjustment is 3%, they try to average it out and what that looks like monetary. But like I said, it's not typically what's done, so you still have to watch that market to make sure you don't fall behind.
Yeah.
But for employees, it's definitely more equitable because you and I are both getting the same increase regardless what we're making
Yeah, and
per hour.
under the formula that she's talking about, I have experienced that, and it basically, what it does is it basically compresses everything to a norm, right? The lower level gets the higher increase, the higher levels get less of an increase, and it starts to drive or compress.
You can't do it forever, right?
No,
Right.
and I can tell you, it does have instant negative effects on the workforce. The lower levels think it's fantastic. The folks that have been around for a long time endured it for 2 years, and then we lost 50% of our upper level employees.
Well, so there's no magic bullet.
There is not. No, there really isn't, and that's the point. I mean, this was kind of an experiment that we found, wow, there are things you really have to understand. It was a harsh lesson, so you just really have to watch out for those things. But there is no silver bullet type of thing. It's just one of those you have to be thoughtful and really look at it, and that's why I said that comparable market is a key factor in that, because you have people that are willing to travel a certain amount or this type of thing within the area, and that's who they generally will interact with, is people in these other areas that are comparable. And so it's that feeling of equity overall. How do I compare, or how do I feel I'm doing, for the work that I'm doing? And you want them to be fairly compensated and have that sense of equity amongst their peers as well.
Tessa, you were going to say something?
I was just going to say that the moving bullet or target is a great analysis because compensation really is, because as soon as you guys do something and you get to market, if that's your desired goal, if the next county does a study and they adjust, it changed.
That's right.
Your unions change things because they ask for different things, they have different priorities. The market is different than the COLA. And textbook theory would say it all should look like this. Well, public sector is not pretty and it doesn't follow a textbook. So all of these things have to be in consideration. I just think the big piece of it is to be consistent, to be objective, and then obviously to be that transparent between your employees, your unions, and also the public to say, hey, this is what we're doing and here's why we're doing it. That's what I think is key.
Go ahead, please.
So how does this fit in with negotiations and the fact that we are in negotiations right now? And how's that work?
That's a great question, and I think this is something that, we have started negotiations with one union, and we've got 2 other meetings set. This is going to be part of the discussion, right? Because I think we need to understand what the unions, I would like nothing more than to establish a 3-year contract, and that's been kind of our starting assumption, right? With this process taking place in the first part of next year, that will have an influence on the negotiations. And I don't have, part of me wants to say, let's do a 1-year agreement so that we can figure out where we are before we go into a 3-year negotiation. Part of me wants to avoid that like the plague, because it's just a very arduous process to go through for both sides. And so I think there are ways to consider this in our negotiations and to come up with 3-year agreements that create flexibility for us to incorporate new information. Because again, moving toward equity, moving toward making sure that we are adequately compensating staff, especially in this job market, which is so vexing. It's really difficult. I mean, we all hear about the churn that's going on across the country. We're experiencing it as an organization. And it's really imperative that our compensation is competitive enough for us to be able to attract folks to the positions that we need to fill. And if we fall short in that, we're going to be in a really bad spot.
Yeah, I think a big part of it, it's something to be transparent about, that we are looking to do this next year.
Mm-hmm.
But really, that's about the end of it when it comes to the negotiations, because no one knows until you actually go through and do the process. We'll just stay true to the process and we'll go through it.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't use that as a negotiating block because you don't know what the results will be, and
Right.
nor do they. And so it is just something for information,
Mm-hmm.
and then you go ahead and make your, you negotiate to an agreement and you move forward for your period of time that you agreed on. With this knowing, because these are things that constantly go on. I mean, the dynamics of the economy and doing these adjustments. This is an offer of good faith to keep that equity in mind as we do these evaluations. And if anything, it should give, each of our bargaining, partners, it gives them the insight that is important to us, to continue to evaluate and make sure that we're being equitable and we're doing the right thing in our negotiations and in our processes as well, that reflect on our pay. And that's really what it is.
Yeah, I'd say it's, and I don't mean to disrespect any of the bargaining units, but
No.
it was, I would say last year, we continually said, well, we don't know what's going on with the pandemic, so we gotta, batten down the hatches, and we got to play it very safe, and we care about you, and we promise to do this study. And kind of the feedback was like, oh yeah, we'll see. And,
Right, and I would too if I was sitting
right,
there.
right. No, that's fair. I was like, yeah, that's fair. You don't have to believe me now, but we really,
Right.
we really
Right.
mean it. So, so I'm really excited about this. But
Sure.
it is just a part of the conversation.
That's
I don't
right.
think it's anything we can,
No,
no,
because we don't know what the
factor.
outcome will be
Yeah.
individually or as a group. We don't know how it'll affect, but and if they're interested in the process and how it will go, well then, certainly they'll be part of that discussion as we're going forward, if you're utilizing transparency.
Yeah.
And I would say too, doing the study is always a window of opportunity. So right now the board has an appetite for it. It seems like it's the right time to do it. So I think that's great. I think the timing doesn't maybe match when you go, because you're in negotiations right now. But I would say if you do a market analysis or you do evaluations or ongoing maintenance, you're fixing the problems. And even if you're in a 3-year negotiation, I've never seen a union say, no, we don't want an increase.
Nope.
Now, if it's an issue that, a job needs to be downgraded, that you'd have to wait for, and I think that's okay, and you can talk about that at the next negotiation. But a lot of my clients come in at the same period. It's not good timing, but I think you can work on it. You can ask, even the unions if you want, who do you think we look like? And you don't have to use all of them, but at least asking is helpful. We also have spotlight communities, and those are communities that are maybe bigger than you, but you maybe want to be watching, but you don't want to include in your average because it's really going to skew. So an example is like the city of Casson is right next to Rochester. They're only 6,000 people. So they want to spotlight or see what Rochester is doing to find trends, but they're never going to be comparable to them. And what they found out is their entry level to mid-level management is paid about the same as their top end that's really higher. And it should be, because they have departments of 60 where Casson has a department of 2. So that's the other thing to consider. The last thing to consider is if you decide, hey, we're going to do a market analysis with DDA or ongoing maintenance, but we don't want to do it till next year, let us know who you think your benchmarks are, and we can run a quick market analysis this year to at least help you go into negotiations. We have that data readily available, and we can just provide that at no cost, but just to help you with where you're going into negotiations. And then we would use that to go off of next year too. But we offer that as our, we have clients that are in all different phases of negotiation, so we could help with that too.
Great, thank you. Any other questions, comments from commissioners?
Good conversation.
Yeah, it's very exciting. Really appreciate your insights and just the way you broke everything down for us, and look forward to future conversations here.
Perfect. Okay, and if you guys want me to go in front of the personnel committee next, that's fine too, because they might have different questions, and we're happy to answer those or go through a similar presentation if you think that would be beneficial. I think the transparency and getting everyone on board is important.
That would be top notch. It really would. So we'll get you that link. It'll be a Zoom meeting. So.
Perfect.
Very good. Well, Tessa, thank you very much for the presentation today. It's been really helpful.
Good. I'm glad it was. And if you guys have additional questions after, send them to James. He can send them to me. But yeah, if you let me know when that next meeting is, we'll put it on our schedule, and we'll kind of do the same thing. And we could even, if you had your benchmarks, James, or we could put a preliminary just to show you maybe where we think you are. It doesn't have to be divulged at that meeting, but at least to help you with negotiations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. That could be really helpful too. That is I think that's a trick though, is to identify those comparables there. But we'll work on that.
We'll have the conversation.
Yeah, we'll work on that. We've got some from LELS, and then we can also compare that to what we used last time, and just see where things line up or don't. So
Yep, and I think asking your department heads too, because sometimes they look at themselves different because of roads, square mile of roads, or beds of jails, or number of clients in social services. You know, they have different things that they kind of use as indicators. So sometimes just asking them and having that conversation to let them be part of the process is a good one.
Absolutely, that's a
I
great
like that.
point. Yep. Thank you.
All right.
All right, well, we'll be in touch. Have a great rest of your day.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, James, for bringing her on board.
Yeah, that's
That
great.
was a great find. Someone recommend it?
Well, actually, Pamela requested the proposal before she left.
Oh,
So I
okay.
can't take credit for that.
Well, you listened.
I listened. That's what I said I would
Yeah.
do, right?
Sometimes that's, in your spot, that's the best thing you can do.
Really good.
That was great, yeah.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
that's I guess, item 3A there. Thank you very much. Very exciting. And moving on to the minutes of our standing committees. Unfortunately, I believe our personnel committee is canceled for
It
this
is.
month.
We
Otherwise,
can work to reschedule that.
yeah, that might be really beneficial for all parties. So that'd be great. But otherwise, we have the personnel minutes there, public safety, transportation, very, very informative committee minutes. So thanks for including those. And otherwise, we can move on to adjournment, and we don't take action, so we're adjourned.
See how he's learning?
Takes a few times.
Yeah, no.
It's only
Well,
October.
you get into a routine, you know? That's just how it is.
Yeah, programming.
All right. Well, I'm gonna make it.
I'm going to